Welcome to the Garage Gym Experiment podcast, where we dive deep into the home gym scene. Each week, we put out Sunday surveys where you tell us your thoughts on products, builds, and all things home gym related. We're here to break down the numbers and to talk shop. So thanks for listening, and let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Garage Gym Experiment podcast. I'm Michael, alongside Jake as a guest host on this week's episode. Don't worry, Adam and his big brown eyes will be back next week. This week, we have David Kirkus, aka Darko Lifts on Instagram, for tonight's two-part episode. In the first episode, we'll chat about the survey results from last week, which covered some influence, programming, technology question, and level of interest in equipment history. In part two, we'll do a deep dive into David's home gym experiences and much more. All right, take it away, Jake.
All right, let's start off with how likely are you going to buy based off a recommendation from either your favorite athlete, favorite influencer, or favorite reviewer? So last week we asked about favorite athlete and then wanted to bring up favorite influencer and favorite reviewer as well to see how it compared. So as a reminder, or if you didn't listen last week, with favorite athlete, about 67% or 2/3 said that it makes no difference. 27% said they're more likely to make a purchase. And then just 6% said very likely. That's saying that they're very likely to make a purchase based off of their favorite athlete promoting something. If you compare that to favorite influencer, those numbers are down slightly in terms of influence. So only about 4%, that's compared to 6%, said very likely, 26% more likely, and then just under 70% said it makes no difference. And then lastly, we have favorite reviewer. This one does have the most influence based off what the data says. However, even the very likely to buy based off of a reviewer promotion is only at 7% compared to 4 and 6. So still pretty low number. And then where you do see some changes, the more likely. So 51% say they are more likely to buy something based off of a favorable promotion or review from their favorite reviewer. And then about 42% said makes no difference. That a reminder that compares to the upper 60% tile for the other two. So favorite reviewer, most influential, number 2, favorite athlete, and then number 3 is the influencer. What do you guys think of that?
I think it's interesting to see from a data perspective how much the favorite reviewer can potentially swing or confirm somebody's decision to buy something. This is something I always wondered. I think favorite athlete's an interesting one to throw in there because I think in most circumstances, those athletes are promoting something with money being the primary motivator there. But influencer and reviewer, I think the hope is that, in anybody in one of those categories is giving you an honest review on the piece or whatever they're talking about. But I think this is really interesting. I really like this question.
I mean, I could see how the numbers, turn out for the reviewers. I mean, I think we all have our favorite people that we watch on YouTube anytime a new piece of equipment comes out.
For sure.
And you kind of have an idea of who's, getting paid or who's actually buying their products. So there's not as much reason for them to give a favorable review for something. I mean, with influencers, I'm on Instagram. I post a bunch of stuff. I'm not, the guy that's reviewing, 20 sets of J cups. So if I was to look at me for something like that, I'm not sure if I'd be the best answer. But when you see people like Coop and Basement Brandon and Garage Gym Lab, they're going through 20 different J cups, and you can kind of get an idea of what, they really like, and they're not going to sell something that they're not really a fan of usually. So I can see why the numbers shake out that way.
Yeah, I think there is quite a bit of difference between a reviewer and then the other two. They're actually like getting their hands dirty with a product and saying their opinions, rather than athletes and influencers. They're just kind of giving stuff and try and make it look cool. But yeah, good feedback. Let's move on. So we had some programming questions. So how many follow a workout program? How many pay for a workout program? and then have a one-on-one coach. So as you would expect, those numbers go down each time with each of those questions. So about 72% say they follow a workout program, at least on a regular basis. 41% pay for programming, and then just under 10% have a one-on-one coach. And I do have some quick comparison data that I'll run through with you. So we've asked this question since 2020. I should say we asked all three of these questions. We have asked all three of these questions since 2020, starting back in December of 2020. So we can see how it kind of shifts over time. In general, for all of these, we saw a lower percentage of people saying all of these in December of 2020, and it's kind of leveled off since then. So for example, percent that follow a workout program in December of 2020, it was about 61%. And that's over the 18 months or so, it's gone from 73 to 71 and then to 72% this time around. Percent that pay for a workout program back in December of 2020, it was at 33%. That went up to 43, 39, and then 41% this time around. And then percent with a one-on-one coach, this is the only one that's kind of gone down. So in December 2020, about 14% said they had a one-on-one coach, whereas this time around, it's gone down, as you can see on the screen, if you're watching, to 10%. That might be some data that might be kind of shocking to you as far as the amount of people who are following a workout program. Like 4 out of 10 are paying for programming, and then 10% have a one-on-one coach. So any thoughts? Are you actually surprised by this?
I'm surprised by how many people have a one-on-one coach. That number seems very high to me, just from the people I talked to on, Discord. It doesn't seem like most of them have a one-on-one coach at all. I mean, I know a lot of them follow workout programs like, Juggernaut AI, things like that, but having a one-on-one coach, that number does seem high. I'm not surprised that number has come down, though, just based on the fact that gas is $6 a gallon.
Yeah. And you likely have better programming options, more personalized too, it seems like.
Yeah, I think so. I think David mentioned it, things like Juggernaut AI. There are, so many different templates out there that you can purchase one time, whereas a one-on-one coach is going to be an ongoing, like a subscription essentially, right? That you're having to kind of commit to month after month after month. I think the thing that's most maybe shocking or just encouraging is I just like seeing that people are following a program of some sort, right? It's always a bummer to connect with somebody who, talks about training, or that they go to the gym and they don't follow a program, right? Like they will just kind of aimlessly wander into the gym or into their home gym, and they just will kind of say like, oh yeah, I think I'll hit chest and back today, with really no other parameters other than that. And so, I think from personal experience, at least, that most programs work if you work them, right? So if you stick to the program and you're disciplined, you're going to have a much better chance of getting the results and seeing the success that you're hoping for. So this is great. This is great information. Did you ask on this? I'm assuming no, like the question, like not following a program whatsoever.
Well, it was either, do you follow a workout program? And 72% said yes. So 28% aren't.
This is data across a couple of questions then, I think, right?
Yeah. So these are 3 different questions.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Makes sense.
Let's move on. So how do you feel about tech entering the home gym space? So this is another one where we have some comparison data. We asked about it in January. So 7 months ago, relatively close in comparison to how long most of our surveys, in terms of how long we wait until we ask again, just because this is kind of a hot topic and you kind of want to stay on top of it. I'll just quickly go over the August numbers and then say how those compare. But in August, 9.7 say big fan of tech entering the home gym space. 26% say fan. 52% are neutral. and 13% are keep me away. So the biggest change we saw here is our big fans of tech entering the home gym space. That went down. That started at 14.1% in January. As I said, it went down to 9.7. So that's a 31% change. While not a ton were in favor of it in January, it did go down even further. And then relatively steady for the most, all underneath 11% was the biggest difference there for the rest of them. But I think the big thing is it's not going up. As more tech is coming out, it's not going up, at least in terms of the people answering these survey questions. So that's what the data says. What do you guys say about tech entering the home gym space?
I mean, personally, I think anything that gets people to work out, move a little bit more is always going to be a good thing. I think the problem with some of these tech, solutions is it's just another subscription. I mean, we all already have, 7, 8 things that we're subscribing to every single month, and $10, $20 a piece, it just starts adding up. So, while it works for some people, I think just eventually people are getting tired of just having 10 different services they're paying for. And I don't know, it just kind of feels eventually it's just they keep grinding and grinding and grinding to get every penny. And I think eventually it's just not going to work anymore.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it like that. I think I'm not a fan personally. I'm also a bit of a traditionalist here, right? I think that I've had some great success using traditional, barbell movements and hypertrophy stuff. And I know that the tech that they've introduced kind of follows the similar principles. But to your point, David, right? Like in a lot of cases, like I think I'll use tonal as the easy or the one that comes to mind, right? Like big initial investment just to get the piece in your home gym. And then is there a subscription with that as well? Do you guys know?
Yeah.
Okay. Of course. Yeah. I mean, everybody wants that recurring monthly income, right? Like subscriptions are not the future. They're already here. But I still think that there's maybe an opportunity. I just don't think anybody's quite nailed it yet, right? Like, I don't think that anybody's really done anything that's game changing or that is going to change the minds of people in the community that we exist in, right? That have already invested significant resources into their home gyms, where they're going to say and look at something like a tonal or something like that and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of this and just hang this piece on my wall because that's going to be better. They just haven't nailed it yet. I think probably the closest one is the spin bike that everybody's
Peloton.
The Peloton.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they're in the atmosphere, right? Like they took something that people were already interested in, which was cycling, but they created a community through that, and that inspired people to work out, right? You can partner up, you can do it alongside your friends and things like that. But beyond that, I just think that everybody's still a ways off.
Yeah, I would say I'm not like incredibly excited for it, especially to like interfere with my home gym workouts. But I will say I've used Juggernaut AI.
Yeah.
I would kind of consider that tech. So I think a lot of it is just like annoying. Like there's just some like the tonal, like people promoting tonals to like the home gym lifting crowd. That's kind of strange. But like combining like something like a Whoop. I like my Whoop. I'm not like, it's not something that you're like staring at for the most part during your workouts. Yeah. It's just kind of like a high level, like, oh, you are, you're dead tired. You should just take a break today. Or like, you're feeling good. It's a good day to just go all out. So I think about things like and I've said this on podcasts before, and I said this to Chad Wesley Smith when I was on this podcast. I said something like, I like my Whoop. If you could pair that with the Juggernaut AI so that you don't have to answer all those questions before, and then also like somehow get it on a screen so that it's easy to track rather than just like looking at my phone every rep and plugging in. Like I think like there in a perfect world, like you wouldn't realize that the tech's there. So I think like it has potential, but like, you know, it's not like incredibly exciting, or I don't think it's going to have, or it's not going to improve a massive amount of people's workouts, but it would likely make it more convenient. And that's like a perfect world. I'm like imagining this, like there's a big screen and I don't have to press buttons and it automatically connects to my body, you know, like just probably going to be here one day, but who knows when.
Yeah, I like that answer, Jake. I think what I'm hearing, and I think what we're all kind of saying, is that tech that kind of complements or adds convenience, right, to the things that we already love doing, which is training in a more traditional fashion, we're all for. But things that kind of edge in that tonal space that's trying to recreate the wheel, essentially, right, or reinvent the wheel, those just aren't as appealing. But I think Whoop is a great example. I use an app to track all of my lifts, and I love the graphs and everything that are in there. So
yeah, and I do think you see Peloton's downsizing huge. They're closing things.
Yeah.
Tonal just laid off a ton of people.
Totally.
You know, I think it was like just really good timing in terms of like COVID, and there was like this ideal target audience of a bunch of people in like apartments who had nowhere to go. Yeah. So I think it was just like it advanced companies like that farther than they ever should have. And now I think it's leveling out, and it's just not for everybody, which is why those companies are kind of steadying off, I guess, or even going away.
Well, they definitely got a lot of buyers that they just normally would never have gotten. You got 300 million people in America home for a year and a half. Who, people went to spin class, people went to the gym. They, you know, so once you remove that, it's an easy solution. It was an easy solution for most people to go ahead and just buy a Peloton or a Tonal, something like that, just to feel good about themselves. Which, I mean, working out makes you feel good, so makes sense.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see, and I'm sure the numbers are out there, but I'd be curious to see like what's the retention rate like in terms of those subscriptions. I know a few people who just use their Peloton bike as a bike now. They don't pay it. So I imagine unless they pump up some really good content or lower the subscription, it's probably going to keep dwindling. So anyways, let's move on to the opposite of tech, the history of gym equipment. So level of interest in learning more about the history of gym equipment. So not a massive amount of high interest here. Only 10% said high interest. 26 are in the medium range, 57 low, and then 7% neutral. Next up, we'll ask about vintage wastes interest. 10% again, say high, 22% medium, 57 low, and then 12% neutral. So it's definitely a niche kind of interest for people. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
I mean, personally, I'm going to be in that low category for both of those. It's not an interesting topic to me personally. I know that might rub certain people, Efren, the wrong way, but it's just nothing, I want to see what's coming out. Like, when Rogue, Rev, Titan, they all have new product releases. Like, that's what I want to see. I'm not trying to go back and see when Rogue first started or when York started. I personally don't have a lot of interest in it, and I can see why a lot of people are like that. Have that same thought. It's metal. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the majority.
I'm probably medium, but I've had seasons where I've been really high. I think that there's some really interesting and unique stories that, for me personally, were really entertaining to dive into. I think York in particular has a really fascinating story about change in ownership and how they really fumbled a lot of opportunities, and went from being kind of the standard to, my own personal experience with trying to buy some of the stuff that they're putting out today and just seeing like what that journey has looked like. That was really interesting for me. If anybody's interested, you can check that out on the oldbodybuilding.com forums. There's some vintage York employees that have even chimed in to really spill the tea on what went down there. But, kind of outside of that, I think it's cool. And I love what Rob and Efren are doing. I always, am interested to check it out, but I don't find myself pursuing it or going to look for it or seeking it out. right? I mean, if I ever stumbled across some vintage Yorks in my area, I'd probably still jump on them though.
Yeah. Well, all right. This leads me into one last thing before we move on to the Q&A. Well, and you guys are the first to hear it, but we have teamed up with Rob from Vintage Weights PGH and launched a new podcast called Home Gym History. So basically the premise is Rob is the expert on vintage weights, and he's kind of giving us a lesson each week in the first episode. So we're recording this on Wednesday night, tomorrow morning. So anybody listening, it'll already be out. So it's Home Gym History. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, Garage Gym Radio, YouTube channel. And the first episode, Mike, just so happens to be the history of milled era York weight plates and how they compare to modern made in USA plates. So we're going to do that for a little while. Well, hopefully the reaction is a little bit more than the 10% high interest. But actually, if you get 10%,
maybe this will change my mind.
yeah,
Yeah.
give it a shot. Give it a shot. It'll be a good show. You know, I think like for somebody who has even some mild interest, you know, they're short episodes, 15, 20 minutes. And like I said, Rob basically takes Adam and I on a lesson each week going through some iron history. So yeah, that's the announcement.
I dig it. Way to go, Rob. That's my buddy. And I'm loving that you guys are going to cover the York story first. I think, and I hope that, you know, like I think a lot of people probably don't like find themselves flipping to the History Channel nowadays, but you know, when you scroll past the TV or something and there's something interesting from history, you find yourself sitting down and tuning in, right? Because it's fascinating and there's really interesting stuff that's happened. I think it's going to be good. I'm excited for you guys.
Cool. Yeah. And honestly, like we don't expect it to be like the number one thing for most people. But the ideal with this podcast network is to get into each little niche, not all of them, but the ones that we find most interesting and like create something for those people. So this is one of those shows, and we'll see how it goes. All right.
Awesome.
That's going to do it for survey edition.